Buenas tardes, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Edgar Palacios. I run the Latinx Education Collaborative, and we work on increasing the representation of Latinx education professionals in K-12. I'm so excited to see each and every one of you here. We are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're proudly doing it. And so I reached out to Juan to see if he could gather the most brilliant minds in education and in the community. And so he decided to put this together. And so grateful that you are all participating today, but just incredibly grateful for the work that you have done and continue to do in support of our kids, in support of our future as a community. So with that being said, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm gonna kick it off. I'm gonna throw it over to Julia.
Thank you, Edgar. And just to repeat, I am really excited about this. This is an LNESC reunion of sorts and a celebration of what we've done, where we've been, where we are now, and looking ahead a little bit. But we thought this would be a great way to celebrate part of Hispanic Heritage Month and looking at education and education in Kansas City. And so as I was thinking about this and how to kick it off, I'm a mission-driven person, and so I went because I did not remember the mission of LNESC. I'll admit it's been 20 years. I went ahead and looked it up, and it's so applicable. The mission is to provide educational and leadership opportunities to create lifelong learners and leaders within the Hispanic community. And as I look at this Zoom and look at all of us, I say, well done. I think we are a good embodiment of that mission and how it continues. And so thank you all again for saying yes to our invitation to share stories and be a part of this. And so the group that brought this together, Juan Rangel and Lorena Patino, thank you both for working with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Lorena.
Gracias and buenas tardes a todos. I'm glad to see everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm excited for this conversation. My name is Lorena Patino, and I work at LNESC as an educational advisor for the middle school, and also for Guadalupe Centers High School, which formerly known as Alta Vista. I'm currently the Community and Family Engagement Coordinator at Guadalupe Centers Elementary School. And I would like for our guests to state their name and your role then when your association with LNESC, and what's your role now. And for time purposes, I will call you in the order of how I see you align on my video. We can start with Jennifer.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Glover. I was a volunteer coordinator at LNESC for a couple of years back in 2003, 2004, 2005-ish. At that time, we were working in numerous elementary schools, got to know Lorena. Obviously, she was the middle school guru at the time. She loved the middle schoolers. We assisted with obviously the HLOP program and the Hispanic Leadership Institute Scholarship Fund. So that was my involvement in LNESC. And thank you, Lorena, for inviting me today.
Andres Dominguez. I will tell you that I was one who got to serve on the board. And that was an exciting time for Kansas City. I was a board member under Maria Belcito, who was the board chair, whom many of you may remember. It was a good time. That was when Ivan Vasquez ran the executive director, and subsequently served as its board chair as the organization transitioned over to Mike Macias. And what am I doing today? I am a program officer at the Health Forward Foundation. I've been there now going on 14 years. Still involved with educational issues, still very concerned about our young people being able to graduate, access colleges and universities. It's a very important role.
Thank you, Andres. And I also forgot to mention that I was part of LNESC as a student. My educational advisor was Yvonne Vasquez Rangel. Next one is Marvin.
Hi, everybody. It's great. My name is Marvin Grillio. It's great to see some familiar faces and some folks I certainly hope to get to know better. I was an LNESC counselor in 1995-96. We, would write our reports in stones and chisels back in that day. So worked in several middle schools at that time, obviously involved with HLOP, and took some trips with the National Hispanic Institute as well. So fast forward to now, I'm a teacher at Rockhurst High School, and I am the director of a program here that I was explaining at the beginning called the Untitled Scholars Program, which works with middle school students in Catholic schools on the Missouri side. And a large majority of our students are Latino background, and so certainly it's been an arc for me that began with LNESC so many years ago.
Hi everyone. Buenas tardes. It's so good to see so many faces. I haven't seen so many of you in such a long time, so I just want to throw that out loud very fast. I was an education counselor for LNS. I was there when Marvin was there for a few years. I was there when Julio was there. In fact, I remember the first day I walked in when Yvonne introduced me to the troops the first day, and I remember just seeing Julia and I thought, I love her hair. I love everything about her. Right away, she looked artsy to me. So I thought, we're going to get along really good. And then Marvin was so smart and spoke Spanish. And I knew I was joining the right team then. I was an LNS counselor for schools mostly in North Kansas City. I was like Winnetonka, North Casey, Park Hill, Oak Park. And then later on, I got the privilege of picking up Sumner Academy in Kansas City, Kansas. I don't know how I got chosen to do that, but I'm grateful I did, because that was a great school with a great supportive administration that loved LNS, and so it was easy. And then later on, I got to pick up some schools in Topeka, which was really important to me because I'd gone in to talk to Yvonne, who was our director, who she was always, you could always walk into her office and talk to her. And I said, is there any chance we could ever do Topeka, go back to where I grew up and talk to those Latino students there? And she said, yeah, let's start working on it. And next thing I know, I was at Topeka High, Highland Park, and meeting some really great kids and doing some really the wonderful mission of LNS. So now I'm a kids lit writer. I've always been a writer. I was even writing when I was an LNS counselor. So some of you may show up in my stories later, just telling you. But I am a kids lit writer, and I've been doing that now for like the last 7 years.
Edward Marquez, and I don't quite remember the years. That probably says how long ago it was. I want to say late 80s to 91, around there. Adriana will probably correct me on that, where I was director of the LNEC program. And I think I was there 4 to 5 years at the time, and then moved on. And yeah, I have great memories. I remember seeing all of you different times in different roles during those years. I'm now in Shawnee Mission. I work for the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation in Shawnee Mission School District. And I'm a point person for their scholarship program, Scholarship Shawnee Mission. And this is starting my second year. I started here in July of 19. Yeah. So that's me up to date right now.
Do you need an introduction?
No. My name is Juan Rangel. My education counselor was Adriana Pesina, at that time Melgoza. So she was my educational counselor. She helped me. I was already in college at the time, but helped me get connected to the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and actually told me that she was leaving her position for the Ewing Merriam Kaufman Foundation at the time, and said if it's time for you to give back to your community, so you need to take my job. So I said, okay, all right, that's what I'll do. So I ended up becoming an educational counselor, and then did HLOP with Ed Marquez, who was the leader at that time, and Andrea Mas was the executive director. Yeah, so fast forward, I am now work for School Smart Kansas City. It's a collaborative fund here in Kansas City that works with the Kansas City public school system.
Hi everyone, Claire, I worked for LNESC back in 2003 to 2006, and so Juan mentioned how he got his start. I actually was graduating from college and went and had lunch with Juan, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but I want to work with students, and I want to help Latino students, and I want to be there the way I had people there for me, Julia, Angela, and so that's when I was involved with LNESC as an advisor, but I was also an HLP student and really active back in the late 90s. So, yep. Now I'm with Kansas City Water Department doing their education and outreach.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to see all of your faces. When I was in high school, my LULAC counselor, LNESC counselor, was Teresa Rodriguez. She was very instrumental in helping me get into college and scholarships, etc. When I graduated from UMKC, I was part of the Hispanic Organization of Youth, and Ed Marquez was one of the individuals that we interviewed for a newsletter that we had, and upon that, the day of my interview, I was 3 months away from graduating. He mentioned to me at the end of the interview that there was an opening, so I was very fortunate to become an educational counselor back in the late, I'm going to say late 80s, early 90s. And he was my first boss right out of college. And Andrea Mas was there at the time. And I'll never forget the day Juan Rangel walked in. Our office was flooded because it was in a basement. And we met over about a foot of water, and he was helpful in helping us. I gave him the HDF application, and then he also was helpful in getting us through this flood we were experiencing at the time. So yes, we go way back. And at the time when we were at when I was at LNESC, we kicked off the Hispanic Leadership Program, and we also started the relationship with the National Hispanic Institute with Ernesto Nieto. And John Paul Chauran was one of the first two NHI students that we recommended. I remember driving them to Omaha to jump on a van to get out to New Mexico, where they had the LDZ program. So those were great experiences. And fast forward, I was able to work with the Project Choice program at Kauffman Foundation soon after I left LULAC. And from there, I have been at the Health Forward Foundation for almost 15 years as a senior program officer in the Healthy Communities area. But it's great to see you all.
Thank you, Adriana. And also, I'm gonna also mention that I was in the Project Choice program, and Adriana was my my advisor for that program too. Throughout college. Julia.
I'm Julia Vargas, and I was with LNESC from 1996 to 2001. I do have to admit that when I applied for LNESC, it was a temporary position, so I was only supposed to be there for 3 months. And through, I don't know, luck, they continued having me as the educational advisor. My schools were the urban core, so Northeast, Harmon, Wyandotte, Westport, and Turner. And so got to know Kansas City a lot during that time, and was actually asked to facilitate HLOP when El Capitan, Ed Marquez, stepped away. So had the opportunity to do that as well. I remember being a counselor and talking to my students and telling them my educational dreams, and that, no, I'm not finished. One day I'm going to be Dr. Julia. So I'm going to fast forward to now, and I am Dr. Julia Vargas, and I work at Rockhurst University.
Yay!
Yay. It comes true.
Yes, you're a great example.
I'm Rachel Merlo, maiden name Rachel Hack, and I first came into this world in the early to mid 90s when Juan was my LNESC counselor, and then Ed, you were still doing HLOP at that period. So
can you hear me now, baby? Can you hear me?
Through Juan, okay. I was not at a particularly diverse high school, and there weren't counselors or other teachers looking out for students with my background and my interests. And so Juan did a great job of helping me stay connected and know what was happening outside of that school. And I really had a great time, made some lifelong friendships through HLOP, and then hit the road and got to do some really cool stuff, to visit some schools and do a couple NHI programs, LDZ, and what was it? The Collegiate World Series, and had a blast. Came back from college, and I spent a couple of years coaching teams for the Young Leaders Conference, and we represented Kansas City very well. I'm still proud of those young people who are now adults and parents, and really, really, really sweet people in my life. So now I'm at Google Fiber. I'm the Government and Community Affairs Manager. I've been doing that for about 9 years.
Thank you, Rachel. David? Yep.
When Julia said it's over 20 years, we must have some Paul Rudd stuff going on, because no one looks like it's over 20 some odd years. I'll say that. My introduction to the organization was 92 through NHI, but luckily got aboard with HLOP through my high school years, great years. Stayed in contact with LNESC through college as part of Soul, as Rockhurst. I don't even know if they're around anymore. Organization. And then most of my time was with working a lot as a recruiter, counselor, fundraiser for National Hispanic Institute. And stuff that, today, the stuff that pays the bills, I am the facility manager for Zurich. I have sites all around the country I run, and that now mostly involved in helping with NHI and the recruiting here, and hopefully really building up Kansas City in the next couple of years.
Great. Leo, if you can hear us.
I apologize. Okay, well, you can't really see me, but I do exist. My first exposure to the organization was back in high school. Yvonne was speaking at Hispanic Heritage Month in Garden City, Kansas, out of all places. So it reaches out far west. And then in high school, went over to K-State to do some recruitment visits, and ran into like Robert, went to KU, Phil Senna, all the crew there. So I just want to thank Julia for inviting me to be on this, because it's very near and dear to my heart. I know that most of you guys know Lidia Gonzalez. She's a huge pioneer in the organization. And so just being exposed to Latino leaders throughout the country, and especially Kansas City, and then running into like Angela, with HLOP and all the good things that we're doing. The U.S. Hispanic Leadership Institute. I used to be able to get a lot of people into the VIP parties, all that good stuff. And now I'm at the YMCA. I am the executive director for the Linwood Y, and we focus on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. And in between there, I've had a kind of trajectory, career path, but I'm here. It's always been about education and about uplifting and empowering our Latino students. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Now we're gonna
you.
pass it on to Juan.
All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for being a part of this evening. So there are people that were mentioning names like Yvonne, of course, and Lydia Gonzalez, and there are other staff members that we worked with who couldn't make it tonight, or we couldn't reach them. But just so you know, we reached out to about 25 to 30 folks, and we wanted a good cross-section of the years and then of the roles and all of that. So again, thank you for that. The next question is really, what did it mean to be an LNEC staff member? What did it mean to be a volunteer? What did it mean to be a student for you? What was that meaning? And we bring that up to kind of bring back the experience of what LNESC is. It's gone through many phases. Mike Macias, as you know, the current director, we invited him. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. But what did it mean to you? That's the question we're asking. What did that program mean to you? And we, the three of us, Lorena, Julia, and I had conversations. I mean, for me, it was my first job out of college, you know, and it gave me the opportunity to kind of learn the community, the Latino community, but community engagement in general. And it meant working with students and the educational paths. And so what did it mean to you? So I'm just going to open it up and see who would like to talk first. Who would like to share? What did LNESC mean to you? And I'll call on you too. So.
I can go ahead and start. This is Adriana. I just want to say that it's 30 years from when I first started working at LNAC, maybe 32, 33 years ago. But recently I was part of, UMKC had a conversation with Latino students. And it was, even the chancellor was part of this conversation, and the students opened their hearts about what they were experiencing on campus. What I wanted to mention that to say that LNESC, I'm so proud and happy and relieved that I'm a product of LNESC, and I was able to give back to the community through LNESC as an employee. But LNESC became a family for me. You know, they say your network is your net worth. Mm-hmm. I think so many of us, because we're immigrants, because our parents work so hard, we don't have those relationships with people in professional jobs, employers, etc. And if it were not from the LNESC network, I don't think I would have had the job I have today, the career I have today, and the adjustment to college back then would have been much tougher if it were not for the LNESC program. So I don't know if I can say any more about how important it was in shaping me as a college student and as a professional woman.
Let's go next. Angela, what did it mean to you to work for LNESC? We can't hear you, Angela.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I just wanted to say, you know, Adriana means the world to me. She doesn't even know this, but, you know, when I was at KU and I was involved in the HALO organization, LNS used to always come and bring students there to walk around the campus, and HALO would always get involved with something that we would talk about our experiences in colleges, just to share it with students, to give them a sense that we were Latinos too. We came from the same communities as they did, and we could do it. Somehow we got here. It was a struggle, but you can do it if you want to do it. And I just always remember being in awe of Adriana, and I think it was Victor Hernandez. Does that sound right? Yeah. And I feel like there was one more. I always feel like we came in packs of threes, but
Lorenzo, I think Lorenzo Urrutia.
Maybe, yeah. And I just remember like always being so impressed by you guys and saying that I wanted to do that work. And then I graduated college, I moved to Brownsville and then worked at Hope House, a domestic abuse shelter, for a couple of years as a counselor there. And then I found out about a job opening and I went and talked with Yvonne, and then it means everything to me. It was a job where like my passion was meeting up with like every skill I'd ever learned up to this point, you know, like I was stretching everything. I felt like there was never a day that I wasn't using my skills to create solutions, to help, you know, to talk to students, to navigate with teachers and counselors at their schools so we could do activities. And then later on, you know, with NHI, the National Hispanic Institute, getting involved with them, and so many other, I mean, great organizations. What I loved about LNS so much was not just the people, the moms, the dads that all put in the work for these kids as well, but all the collaborations we made throughout the city. Like I remember collaborations with NHI, collaborations with all the universities, collaboration with even any town. I think we were, you know, it seemed like we were always funneling and involved in so many other groups. And I remember having those FAFSA workshops, those big financial aid workshops, and we would bring in these experts who would give up their evening to talk to our kids and parents about how to fill out a FAFSA properly. That is one of the toughest things that you do. I used to have nightmares about the FAFSA when I was an LNS counselor. I was always afraid some kid was gonna ask me a question, I wasn't gonna know the right answer. But because of LNS and like the leadership of Yvonne and even the board members, they were so well connected. If we didn't have an answer for the students or their parents, there was always someone we could call and say, hey, how did you do this? Or how do we get through here? So I just really learned so much from LNS, and I got to use every single professional, but also my passion together in this job. So it was a great, I don't even remember how long I was there, but I don't know the years at all. I just know Marvin was there, Julia was there, and then Phil came in and Roberto came in, and Yvonne was there through it all. So sorry, I can't tell the years, but that's what it means to me.
That's great. Thank you, Angela. We did have Alex join us there. And Alex, thanks so much for joining us. Just real quick, tell us what years you were at LNESC, if you could, and what your role was and what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Sorry, I forgot. Lorena sent me a text. And so my name is Alex Lopez. So I had the pleasure of working in LNESC from 2003 to 2004, 2005, so for about 3 years. And so it was probably the best job I ever had, and which led to my following jobs, which I currently work as the academic advisor for the Health Science Institute in Mississippi Valley. So I stay in education, and I don't see myself doing anything else but staying in the field of education. So that just pretty much tells you what was the influence that LNESC did for me. And even beyond that, I mean, Julia was my counselor, and so it's just kind of funny how, you know, how things turn out, and I get to see her pretty often. And so I would probably not would have gone to college if it wasn't for Julia, and now I get to see her often. And now that she's a doctor, she has her PhD. So it was an amazing experience, and you know I very often remember all the people that I work with, and yeah, I can't say enough good things about my experience in LNESC.
That's great, Alex. Thank you very much. Capitan Eduardo Marquez, tell us about for you. What did LNEC mean for you? What was it all about for you? What, as a executive director?
I think when we first started, there were a lot of things going on at the time. Remember, I think right about that time, the Greater Hispanic Kansas City Hispanic Scholarship Fund was getting off the ground. And so it was a unique way to really make it a real visual way and real way to give students, here's an opportunity for you. And so the counselors we had were tremendous in fanning out around the community with that. And the thing I think of more than anything was how even at that time you could slowly see the Latino community in Kansas City starting to spread out I remember I started looking at enrollments, and Shawnee Mission North was starting to show a group of students. Even back then, where there were maybe not many, I think somebody alluded to the North Kansas City schools, Winnetonka, North Kansas City, and to some extent Park Hill.
Mhm.
And so the philosophy, I had a philosophy that if we didn't reach out in education as Latinos to other students in the suburban districts and bring them together with the students in the city districts, when would they ever connect? When would there ever be an occasion for them to communicate and get involved? And sometime after that, here we go with the Hispanic Leadership Opportunity Program. So when I think of this, I think of great people that really delivered the goods on behalf of our students, and then kind of trying to connect those bridges to the suburban communities, if you will, and bringing those in contact with the students who live in the city. And hopefully those are relationships, of course not all, but that's solidified over the years and still to some extent exist.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else would like to go? Again, I'll call on you, but anybody have something burning they'd like to say?
Oh, I'll say something. You know, and I will say this: I wasn't a student of LNESC. My introduction was being recruited through NHI, and it was only through the HLOP program I got to meet people and students, counselors, and professionals that I never would have had the opportunity to meet. I mean, I became friends with people in public schools that I wasn't, you know, they lived half across the town. I never knew them. I met my best friend. It was all this different aspects that never would have been given me had I not been a part of this organization. And even through college and through my career, understanding and knowing that those connections are there and knowing and being introduced to those professionals. I still remember Ed introducing people like looking at them on Monday nights and what they did for their career and looking at them. And I'm like, okay, cool. That I never had that before. Seeing the Latino go off to college, you know, and have that heritage and culture and still give back. That meant a lot as impressionable 16, 17-year-old trying to figure out my identity. You know, I didn't have it as strong as some. So finding that through this organization, it meant a lot. And that's why no matter what, you know, they know that NHI will call and say, hey, we need that. Because I know that be the person you needed as when you were a kid to reach out to maybe offer that opportunity to someone like myself who doesn't have it right now, but maybe just that introduction to this organization through that organization could mean all the difference.
Thank you, David. Somebody else.
So Juan, compadre, let me just share some other little insights as I hear what everybody is sharing here. It's wow, what a compelling story we have here. What a master's thesis for that individual who's thinking about their master's degree, or for that their PhD, because what we have here is many years of education and just exciting stories. And we would be remiss if we don't mention Gilbert Guerrero. Knows his story, knows his passion for why the LNESC office ended up in Kansas City. It's my understanding Gilbert was instrumental in that. And Gilbert was behind many of the educational forces that we experienced throughout our careers. But my first real LNESC experience, I have to say, came about because of my work at Inroads, which at that time was about recruiting minority students for internships. And I land there, and there weren't, well, I take that back. There was one Latino out of about 130 in the program. The rest of them were African American. And the executive director had this vision and said, Andres, I know there's a strong, vibrant, smart Latino community in Kansas City. Help us access the entry points for Inroads to be able to bring Latino kids into the program. Ed was there, Andrea Moss was there, Adriana was there, Adriana's sister, Judy was there at Rockhurst. And next thing I know, we have Eduardo Mendez in the program. Adriana's sister was in the program. We had a young man named Gabriel Rangel who ended up going to Minnesota in the program. And it was just an exciting time to be able to see these great kids do great things. But it was because LNESC had already done the work for me that made my work so much easier. And then during that whole tenure, during that whole opportunity to be able to interact with staff who helped identify talented young kids for the En-ROADS program. But over the years, I have to say that the ongoing interaction with people who I know, who I've met, whether we're talking about Achato Villalobos or other young people out there, and I say, I still call them young people because they're younger than me. I'm probably one of the oldest one here. And yet the story that we're hearing here, it's not documented, it's not written. And at some point we have to do that as a community because there's a whole new generation of people that are coming forward and not knowing what happened here during the early 80s, the challenges, and yet the opportunities that existed for people to be able to access college, which is what this program was all about. And you know, another person that was instrumental was Rita Mendes-Smith, who called me in along with Yvonne and said, you know, we need to create a board for this organization, a community board that gives us some further insight around fundraising and opportunities to really build and expand beyond what HLOP and other programs were able to do. So it was just exciting times when I think about how much of that happened, and all that happened before social media. So this was all happening through phone calls. There wasn't any email in the early 80s, mid 80s. It was calling people. It was going to events. It was going to Blanco y Negro or running into people. It was going to various college campuses and identifying who the people out there who knew the Latino kids. And that's what's exciting. And so much of it just happened because of the connection and because a lot of people who cared. And it wasn't just Latinos, but it was a lot of people in the city who cared, counselors, other professionals who really wanted to see Latinos succeed in this town. It was a good feeling. And it's a good feeling right now to be able to share this.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you very much. Who else? We have maybe time for a couple more comments, and then we need to turn it to our next question. Who else? Yeah, go ahead.
Looking back as a young person, the LNESC was really the first time that I learned that I could be a change maker. I think I didn't ever feel as a young person like my point of view really mattered a whole lot. I just needed to pass tests and do what I was supposed to do. And then, you know, Juan came to start seeing me and we'd have conversations that were a little bit more grown up. And then I got into HLOP and Ed talked to us like we were adults and expected things of us and challenged us on how to educate ourselves and form opinions and share those opinions and identify where we thought things could be done differently and done better. I think, you know, that developing our sense of what we valued in life, you know, that those were honesty, integrity, and perseverance in one another. And then, of course, getting into those NHI programs where you put that into practice and speaking at an LDZ and competing at a great debate. So to me, that was the first awakening I had of like, things don't just happen to me or around me. Then coming back as an adult and volunteering with young people, it started out as I want to give back. And also because I was asked and I couldn't say no to Gloria de Leon. Then had a wonderful time for a couple of years. And looking back, you know, and most people do, you realize that the growth that happened within you and the gift that was given to you through that opportunity was just so much more profound than, you know, if I gave a fraction of that to the young people that I coach, it's really one of the most meaningful experiences in my life.
That's great. That's great. We did have Maria Grimaldi also who joined us, but she, yeah, there she is.
Having life problems. Buenos dias. This is so special.
Maria, why don't you quickly introduce yourself, what your role was with LULAC Education, and what are you doing now?
Okay, well, thank you. I came into LNSC in the latter years, and with a program that was Yvonne's brainchild called Young Readers. And it was amazing to see the difference we could make. We had no idea what that program could do for those children. We knew we could help them a little bit, but when teachers told us they saw the difference in behavior from the children that were in Young Readers and how quickly their reading levels went up compared to her other children that were at the same reading level, we had no idea that we could make that impact. The most exciting thing for me was working in the university in 2011, and one of the teenagers rose her hand and she said, "Did you work with young readers?" And she remembered me. And immediately the tears began to flow, because that was Yvonne and I's dream, that those little readers that were told, if you have a low reading level, you can't improve past third grade. You will stay there. And we said, no, that won't happen. They're going to be in college. And after that, I met many in my university recruiting that had been in young readers, and they would remember my face, or sometimes I remembered their little face. And I know Yvonne was watching from heaven. Sorry, my lighting is like awful here. Hold on. So it was a pleasure to be part of that program. And those were in the latter years of LNESC. And really, as LNESC came to a closing, I had stepped in as interim director, and it was probably the most difficult time in my life, and at the same time it was a pleasure and a privilege to be in that position and work with those young students and the amazing staff that we had.
Thank you, Maria.
Today I'm on disability and working in the schools as a substitute, which I love. Still encouraging students to do their best and believe that they can do anything.
That's great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. One more comment and then we'll move on. Anybody else burning?
I would just say quickly, as I look at so many of the faces here and my experience with LNESC, it was I had graduated from college a week before I started with LNESC as a counselor. And again, just for me personally as an adult, to work with the people that I did, Angela and Juan and Julia and Capitan and met Andres and David and Rachel. I don't know if you remember, but I would show up at HLOP. I remember you guys from then. And for me, it was so formational because to be surrounded with Latino energy right out of college, where there weren't many of us, and it really gosh, I don't know how much I did for LNESC, but it sure did a lot for me as an adult. I never went through the program, but it formed me and it gave me kind of an energy and sort of kind of steeled what I wanted to do. I never meant to be a teacher when I went to college, but I've been a teacher for 17 years, and I'm definitely proud to be one. And I carry with me always the experiences, the strength that I felt that LNESC gave me, and with HLOP and the LDZ program that I went to in Colorado as well. These things have stuck with me, and now that I'm director with a program here at Rockhurst that is predominantly Latino, almost all of the students in our program would be the first in their families to go to college. Boy, it's all of your voices I carry with me always, and I'm proud to do that. And Capitan doesn't believe me either, but in 1996 I thought he should be the first Latino president, but I voted for him, but he didn't win.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Marvin. All right. That's great. Let me go ahead and turn it over to Lorena. She'll take us through the next question.
All right. Well, thank you. I love hearing all these stories we are all connected through LNESC, and we all have so many similarities in our stories. We're gonna move on to our next question. How did LNESC or HLOP change your life? And how did it help you to provide a path for where you are now? We can take some volunteers.
Go ahead, Lorena, call on them.
Mary?
Thank you, Lorena. I would say a lot of what I heard everyone saying was that opportunity and those connections. I mean, for me, when you mentioned that you were stretched to use all of your skills, I mean, every day, whether you were a student in HLP, because you learned and then you implemented, and not only did you learn and do, but you were given the confidence that it was yours to do, that it was your leadership to take on. And that really has followed me all through my career when I became an educational advisor for LNESC, teaching those same skills to students, that it wasn't just about getting to college, but it was what you're going to do after college, what you're going to take with you, that the skills that you build in HLP, in talent search, that those are going to be the skills that follow you throughout your whole career. And then working with students, because I've stayed pretty much in education for the duration of the time, teaching them those same leadership skills. I worked with a program where we taught students how to do project-based learning, and you teach students what the project is and how to take ownership. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what we did in HLP. And so now where I'm at today, getting to help build a program where it's education and outreach, really helping people take on their own learning and owning it, and then taking on those projects and being excited about what they can accomplish. All of those leadership skills are definitely what started as a HLP member, as someone going to LDZ, as someone being a part of all of our conferences that we went to around the country. I mean, it just stayed with you from the time you were a student to the time you got to teach it to where we are today. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Mary. Jennifer.
Sorry, I was getting off mute. You know, I was hearing everybody's sentiments about their experiences with LNESC, and you're right, Mary and Lorena, we're all connected, and everyone's stories somewhat echo one another's. And you know, I was thinking about all of the great experiences that Juan posed on. You know, some awesome memories and things that we were able to accomplish at LNESC. And I feel like in those few short years that I was with the program, we touched so many students' lives and gave them so many awesome experiences. You know, for some of you, Maria, Lorena, Alex, Mary, you know, I think back to when we were able to take the kids that year to the USHLI and conference in Chicago, and we got to hear Barack Obama, you know, give the his Democratic National Convention speech. And you know, fast forward 4 years, and he's the president, and you know, while that was a real experience for me as an adult at that time, I often think about what the kiddos and the youth and the teenagers that were a part of that HLOP program that we chaperoned at the time, you know, what that experience, you know, how that experience shaped their lives, and seeing that and being able to participate in those things, and giving the kids the experience of it was Road Rules College Tour, right, at the time, when we chartered the bus and took the kiddos, you know, the students and teenagers cross country and slept in dorms, and really made college, we really normalized college, right, and said, this is for you, this is for everyone, and look around, you have all of these, you know, at the time, we were an excitable, you know, staff, and you have all of us to reach out to and help you and provide assistance. So while, you know, we provided so many great experiences to the students and the program participants, we really got to share in those experiences too. So I'll be forever grateful for those experiences.
Sometimes I feel we got even more than the kids did. I mean, I know it wasn't that way, but I would feel that we were we were absorbing more than they were. Oh, you guys look so beautiful. So wonderful to see everybody. Que linda. Mary, Lorena, and Jennifer, you guys are beautiful.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone else would like to share?
I'd like to share a story, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can, but I don't think that Chato Villalobos minds at all that I share this story. It's been public before, but for those of you that do not know who Chato is, he's one of the best community police officers on the West Side who's making a huge difference every day. And he started off as a high school student at LNESC when I was a counselor there. And at the time, he wasn't going down the right path. And his best friend got selected to join HLOP. And Ed Marquez was the HLOP director at the time. And he, what I appreciated about Ed and about LNESC is that we were very adaptive, right? There were rules, but then there was also people that you have to be flexible, right? And you can't always just follow the rules. So Andres, Chato's best friend, said, I will only come to the meetings if my friend Chato can come. And Chato, unfortunately at the time, did not qualify. But we allowed him to bring Chato, and it turned out that Chato was more engaged in the HLOP meetings than Andres was, to the point that Andres dropped out and Chato stayed in, and he rose to the top. He became an active, one of the most impressive students in HLOP at the time. And fast forward today, Chato has done some incredible things and continues to do those things. And this is an example of what LNESC did for so many young people, right? We were criticized at the time for selecting the cream of the crop for HLOP, but let's be honest, we also were able to be adaptive and allow people to rise to the occasion. We had to select, I think, only 2 or 3 per schools at the time, and it was a very selective group, but I was glad that we were able to work with students and families. And many times the decisions we made, you just never knew how much they impacted an individual and their families. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Adriana. I know Chato, I didn't know that story. Thanks for sharing it. Anyone else would like to share? How did LNESC change your life? How did it help to provide a path for where you're now?
Okay. I think for me, I have memories as a student, because I was part of LNESC as a student in terms of the service that they provided. So for me, rockers, and I told a few friends and a couple of teachers from my high school, and I got a few, not laughs, but not very supportive. Or I think there was even a professor that made a comment to my brother that he thought that I was not going to last there at Rutgers. So I was really having a lot of doubts about going to that institution, because my view of Rutgers was, it's a private school, it seems like only the best students go there. And it wasn't until I actually met with Julia, and she was the one that said, I don't know if she remembered, but you said, yes, you can, you'll do great. And she was probably the one and only person that really reinforced or encouraged me not to have any doubts and just to go for it. And and I ended up graduating, and then later, 4 years later, the fact that Yvonne gave me the opportunity, my first job after college, and it didn't feel like a job. It felt like I don't know, I think it was more like a sense of duty or a sense of responsibility, and that has always stayed with me. Even in my current job, one of the roles that I have is that I'm the president of the Latinx Affinity Group, which is a group for faculty and staff. And about 4 years ago, no one would step into that role. And I just kept telling myself, no, I got too much on my plate. I got too much on my plate. But finally I said, yes, I'll do it. And that was because it really felt like a sense of duty. And it really goes back to, my first years of working as a college, as a counselor, and then, earlier as a student. So, I mean, just in general, I mean, the lessons that I've learned, they still have an influence on my life and how I operate in life and in my job. So it just, it provided me with that foundation that I'm not sure if I would have had it if I was not part of LNESC.
Yeah. So I'll go next real quick. For me, again, having graduated from college and this being my first job, I mentioned about Adriana being my counselor, and her real comment to me about giving back to your community. Well, when I was in high school, I grew up several places around the city, but ended up in the Northland and graduated from Oak Park High School. And so even though a lot of our family friends were from the Latino community, and that's where we would spend, weekends and stuff like that, during the week, of course, I was with predominantly white students. And so part of what LNESC did for me was connect some of what my parents had taught me at home, some of the cultural, importance of who I was. But LNESC reinforced that because now I was in the middle of multi-generational families, and it kind of brought me back. I mean, again, always Latino, first generation Latino. I mean, I could go on. But for me, it brought me a sense of pride in a whole different way about who I was as an individual, and then really my commitment to the community and what I was going to do to help support that community. And so that helped kind of really launch my path. I mean, everything that I did from there on was always with the lens of being a Latino male and what that meant to not only Latino males, but Latino community, and then really other people of color as well, because my experience as a person of color really transitioned into understanding the African American community, understanding Native American community, just other vulnerable communities as well, or targeted communities. So LNESC was the start of that for me. It really gave me that sense. And somebody else that I want to make sure gets brought into this conversation is Maribel Martinez. Maribel was somebody in our office who was our admin support, but she was more than that. She was truly the front line of when people walked through our door. She was the person who was gentle, kind. We'll get you the counselor to work with you. And I just want to make sure she doesn't get forgotten in this conversation, because she's a powerful, powerful part of who we are as well.
Thank you so much for mentioning Maribel. I think of her all the time. She's so amazing. She was not even just our face to the community so many times, but man, for us counselors, I mean, right, Marvin and Julia, I mean, she just, anything we needed, she just helped us with. And she was not just a 9-to-5, Monday through Friday person. She was all in all the time. If we needed her at a weekend car wash to send the kids somewhere, she was there. And I remember one time we did a fundraiser where we were cutting fruit. I don't know who had the idea to cut fruit and throw tahini all over it and sell it. And there she was cutting fruit with all of us, on a weekend. And I just remember going through piles and piles of Hispanic Scholarship Fund applications, remember, like reading those essay after essay, and she would organize most of that. She would get the transcripts and everything. So thank you for mentioning her. Gosh, we can't talk about LNS without Maribel for sure.
That's right.
I guess one thing that I like about this is that years can go by, decades, unfortunately, for some of us. And that if I see one of you guys, if I see an HLP or a LULAC, NHI, it's a hug. It's, oh my God, because of the shared experiences, those trips to Chicago that we kept the counselors up. Those meetings where, yes, Ed is professional and would call us out if we were making too much noise or need to calm down, or just having fun in those road trips. And it means a lot to see someone else, and because it is a running hug, it's like, oh my God, hey, and just to see these many faces, and like, wow, I haven't seen Marvin in forever. Dear Lord, I was like, oh my God, and he's at my alma mater. Hello. It just, that kind of stuff is truly awesome. So I don't know if it's an extended family or a part of a community, but it feels good to have that in my life.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I would agree. It is definitely family that we have, this LNESC family. I had the opportunity to join LNESC from the outside. So, born and raised in North Carolina, moved to Jefferson City, Missouri, went to school in William Jewell in Liberty, Missouri. And so I didn't know of the Latino community in Kansas City. I had very little knowledge when I took this position. And just by being part of it, and I think Angela had mentioned earlier that we had to use all of the networking and the collaborations and building that, I know that set my career going, that connected me to such a larger community than I even dreamed existed in Kansas City. And so, yeah, it's been one of the privileges of my life is to be associated with LNESC and this family.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me? Yes? No? All right, can you hear me? No? Juan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you better. Yes.
Okay. Just real quick, I just wanted to say, yes, the family, super important. La familia, somos familia. But also, I think what, being involved with LULAC and with all the leadership development, I think what really kind of helped take it to the next level was giving you the confidence to be able to transcend and to really take it to the next level. Like being in DC, being with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, coming back to KC, doing a lot of voter registration campaigns that many of you were a part of, all the volunteering at the office. I mean, all those things that you can't put a price on. And you're around so many like-minded people that really want to see Latinos advance and take it to the next level. I mean, it's definitely a privilege and an honor to be a part of that familia. So, thank you.
Thank you, Leo. If there isn't any burning comments, we'll go ahead and start closing this out, if that's okay. I want you to think about the thousands of lives, literally, that just us here on this, that we touched, and kind of where, those lives are now with a lot of people. We were able to even talk about the people on this video, how they touched us, and, the change they created us to make certain decisions and paths that we took in our lives. So for that, I mean, I really want you to know, as we were putting this together, how rich we think each of you are and how grateful we are into the community. I think now it's kind of looking forward. We are still in need of that support, and some of us are doing it in different ways in the places where we're at. There is still a growing community out there that has that doesn't have direction. LNESC, I want to be clear, is still alive and still doing their thing, but it's a different format than it is today. And so I raise that, but I raise that for purposes of where you're at and what you're doing in your lives. I think of Ed with the Shawnee Mission, Foundation and the work that he's doing with scholarships. Marvin now at Rockhurst. If you look at every one of us as we described ourselves, our connection back to education and the work that we're doing. Lorena's at Alta Vista or the Guadalupe Center Schools. Adriana and Andres at the Health Board Foundation for Health. I mean, talk about something that our community really needs is understanding health, right? Rachel at Google. David, of course, doing education in his way. Leo at the YMCA. Alex at Penn Valley. Julie at Rockers. I mean, it goes on. And so how are we touching? Angela's writing books. I mean, she's writing books and telling the world about, growing up being themselves, right? And so we need to continue doing this work. And there's no question that you're going to keep doing it. But tonight, in really celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, the reason we wanted to do that is because Latinx, the organization, the collaborative, they're continuing some of that work. They're bringing Latino educators into our community. And how do we support them? How do we grow them still? Working on an initiative right now to start a C4, which is called Revolución Educativa. We'd love to get you involved in some form, some of you. But part of that is how do we start building a lineage of people? We should have Latinos on every school board in the city, every one of them. Every seat should be fought with a Latino on that, running for that same race, right? And so we're not there. You look at our boards, it's the same people on every board. Every one of you should be on a board if you're not already, but it's how do we start that pipeline? So that is a dedication that Revolución Educativa is going to be doing, is going to be eliciting some of your help as well to how we start educating our families, educating our kids in the community, how we start looking at working with different areas. And so Julia's a part of that. Julia, did I miss anything there? Other things that we're trying to do?
No, I think you got it.
Okay, so the really ending here is to say thank you, but our work is not done. And we ask that you continue doing what you're doing. I am very proud to be connected to all of you. I'm very proud to be a part of your lives in many ways. And I thank you for being a part of my life every day. So if there's no, I want to leave a few minutes here for any parting comments from anybody before we get off, but any final thoughts from anybody before we sign off here?
I just wanted to share something important that you mentioned, which is the education of our parents. LNESC helped. When I got here to the United States from Mexico, we didn't know like how the education system worked, how anything worked, and LNESC along with Project Choice helped with to educate us on what's the process, and doing it in Spanish. It was something that was able to attract my family to make sure that my family went to those meetings. So when we think about helping our families, the language is very important.
Yeah. Any other final comments from anybody before we sign off? Yeah, go ahead, Adriana.
I'd like to mention that Andres and I serve on the UMKC Hispanic Advisory Board. And we have heard some very heartbreaking stories of Latino students that have been on campus and have not felt welcome, that are experiencing some racism. And I'm not singling out one university, right? It's happening across all universities. And it just makes me sad that 35 years later, we still have so much more work to do. The good news is there is Avanzando, which is a mentoring program at UMKC. There's more mentors if any of you are interested. There are some kids that have not been matched because they need mentors. Most of the students there are commuting, so I encourage you to contact UMKC if you need their information. Just get a hold of me. Secondly, I heard another theme that LNESC, what it did for us as students, as board members, as employees, we felt our Latino pride. So many kids, they're not able to feel proud of their Latino-ness, right? So we're very fortunate that we had that. And if there's a way that we can continue that wherever we are, we need to do that. And if there was a wish list, if I could say, I wish this existed for my own kids, even though my kids have 2 parents that have graduated from college, they still need to feel connected to their community, to their Latino brothers and sisters. We need another version of HLOP because that brought in urban and suburban and rural kids. It brought kids from all walks of life. You know, they had one thing in common, and that was that they were Latino, and that those relationships that formed. I mean, we weren't considered a matchmaking program, but there were a lot of marriages that came out of HLOP, a lot of connections that came out of SC, I don't think I would have met my husband if it were not for the HLOP and the U.S. Hispanic Conference. But I'm saying that jokingly, but at the same time, again, I said your network is so important. You know, we need it. We need to continue that network, right? It feels like there's gaps. They come and go, but if we could go back to those formative years of high school, middle school, and create another version of a mentoring program like HLOP, I think we would be in a better position because the problems exist still at Rockhurst, UMKC, KU, K-State, etc. But I appreciate the time that you all provided today. This was a great reunion, and I'm hopeful. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any final comments from anybody? Okay, hearing none. We'll turn it over back to Edgar.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you to each and every one of you for attending today and participating in this reunion. I got off camera because I felt, one, I was unfortunate. I did not have the access to LNESC and the programs and to this community back then. But it is so heartwarming and beautiful to see you all come together in service to our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx community. And so I'm grateful to each and every one of you for paving the way and continuing to pave the way in your individual fields and what you're doing. So please know that the LEC is here to continue the work and to help support you in your efforts as well. We absolutely believe that representation is critical, and it starts in kindergarten. It's with books. It's in college. It's everywhere. I agree with Juan. We need Latinos on every school board possible, imaginable, and every city council office, and even maybe in a presidential race here eventually. But thank you again for joining us, Juan, Julia, Lorena. Thank you so much for gathering the community and bringing them on board. I got to do a special shout out to Leo, who was my first, I would say, real boss, maybe my second, but my first Latino boss ever. So I appreciate what he taught me along the way and what he continues to teach me. And then of course, Rachel and everybody else. So thank you so much for being a part of this today. I look forward to seeing you all in the community, if not virtually, sometime soon.